Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Meredith Archie, President of the NC Chamber Foundation. Thank you for joining us for this important conversation about North Carolina's energy future. As you know, as we all know, North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the nation. That growth brings tremendous opportunities, and it also increases the demands we place on our energy system. Reliable, affordable, increasingly clean energy isn't just a utility issue anymore, nor has it ever been, but it's a business issue, it's a community issue, and ultimately an economic competitiveness issue. That's why the NC Chamber Foundation brought the business community together to help shape North Carolina's business-driven energy vision. This report reflects the voices of employers across industries and regions, and it provides a shared set of priorities to help guide policymakers, utilities, and business leaders as we prepare for the decades ahead. I want to thank the many leaders and organizations who took the time to engage with us in this process. Your insights and perspectives shape the vision, and they will continue to drive solutions in North Carolina. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to note. First, all attendees are muted to avoid distractions. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we'll do our best to address them as time allows. And finally, today's session is being recorded and we'll share the recording and a link and other materials in a follow-up email after today's session. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Dana Magliola. He's our Senior Director of Infrastructure Competitiveness at the NC Chamber Foundation. He'll walk us through the report and its findings, and that will be followed by a panel discussion. Dana, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Meredith. And thank you all for joining us. We've got a great conversation on energy today, and today I'll be highlighting our North Carolina Chamber Foundation's business-driven energy vision. This is the first energy vision for North Carolina built directly from the perspective of employers. It captures what matters most to business in the energy conversation, and it lays out a path to align our energy infrastructure with the growth and competitiveness of our state. Next slide, please. So why now? North Carolina is at a pivotal moment. In 2024, companies announced more than $15 billion in new investment and creating over 14,000 jobs. And that's just one snapshot. That momentum is carried into 2025, fueled by advanced manufacturing, data centers, AI, and electric vehicle adoption. These are exactly the kinds of jobs and companies we want here, but they also place an unprecedented pressure on our energy system. Utilities now project that by 2030, peak electricity demand will be nearly 8 times higher than what they forecast just 2 years ago. That's an extraordinary jump, and it highlights just how quickly conditions are changing. Without modernization and proactive planning, we risk bottlenecks, higher costs, and even entire regions being left behind. For employers, energy has moved from something in the background to a frontline business factor. It shapes site selection, expansion, and supply chain competitiveness. Next slide, please. You can keep going. This vision is grounded in the voices of employers from across the state. Between March and May, we hosted listening sessions, distributed surveys, and worked closely with the steering committee industry leaders. Participants came from manufacturing, healthcare, logistics, agriculture, life sciences, tech, and more. Importantly, we heard from both large and small businesses, from rural regions and urban centers. That breadth of input ensured that the vision reflects the reality of doing business in North Carolina, not just today, but looking forward. What we heard made one thing very clear. North Carolina's energy system is under pressure from multiple directions, and we don't have time to wait. Demand is surging, and the pace of growth is already straining our system. Much of our grid was built for a smaller analog economy, and that aging infrastructure creates bottlenecks. It slows interconnection and limits where growth can occur. Businesses also pointed out that permitting and regulatory complexity is a barrier. Navigating city, county, municipal, state processes that don't align slows projects and raises costs. And then there's the rural-urban divide. Too many rural megasites are disqualified from investment because they simply can't guarantee reliable power. Companies increasingly say energy capacity is now a deciding factor in location decisions. And finally, resiliency and security are real concerns. Cyber threats, substation attacks, hurricanes, and ice storms are no longer rare. They're becoming a regular part of doing business in North Carolina. The takeaway is this: these aren't future risks, they're immediate challenges that demand near-term action. From this input, business leaders outlined 7 clear priorities for action. At the top is reliability. Employers were clear: power cannot be optional. An outage means lost productivity, missed opportunities, and even risks to health and safety. Closely tied to that is affordability and predictability. North Carolina's current energy costs are a competitive advantage, but sudden spikes or volatility could quickly erase it. Businesses want smart, efficient investment that keeps prices stable over time. The third theme is balance. Employers strongly support an all-of-the-above approach. Nuclear, natural gas, solar, storage, and emerging technologies all working together to ensure flexibility and resilience. Beyond those essentials, businesses emphasized the need to strengthen grid capacity, streamline permitting, close the rural-urban energy gap, and leverage sustainability as a competitive advantage. Taken together, these pillars form a practical, business-driven framework. They're not just abstract policy goals. They're operational necessities for companies to try and expand, hire, and compete here in North Carolina. This energy vision provides clarity on what matters most to employers in North Carolina's energy conversation. It unites business leaders around 3 essentials. Energy must be reliable, it must remain stable and cost competitive, and it must come from a balanced mix of resources that can adapt to future needs. It also calls for action on permitting reform, rural investment, grid capacity, and sustainability. These aren't preferences, these are business imperatives. They directly affect investment, site selection, and the ability of companies to grow here. As we look ahead, this report gives policymakers, regulators, and utilities a clear blueprint for collaboration. By aligning our energy system with business needs, we can ensure energy remains an asset, not a barrier to North Carolina's competitiveness. To take this conversation further, we brought together a panel of leaders who helped shape this work and who can speak directly to what it means for their industries and communities. Before we begin, I'd like to share a quick note on today's panel format. This panel was pre-recorded due to the panelists' availability and busy schedules. Their perspectives were too important to leave out, so we captured this conversation when we could. The discussion was recorded live on the day the report was released, with each panelist being provided the report in advance. What you'll see is presented unedited, just as it happened. You're welcome to submit questions in the chat, and while panelists themselves will not be present to respond quickly, we do our best to address key themes during the session and in future conversations when you can engage. We can talk in more depth about the energy vision. Now, I'm honored to introduce the panelists, all of whom were active members of the steering committee, of the broad steering committee that helped shape this vision. George Baldwin is a veteran energy and industrial sector executive and consultant. He brings decades of experience working with utilities, regulators, and businesses to align infrastructure strategy with economic growth. Kit Kramer is the president and CEO of the Asheville Chamber of Commerce, where she has been a driving force for regional economic development and competitiveness. Under her leadership, the Asheville Chamber has been nationally recognized for its innovative and impactful programs. Kevin McLaughlin is the Vice President of Government Affairs and External Relations at Duke Energy. He leads the company's engagement with policymakers, regulators, and stakeholders across North Carolina, bringing the utility perspective to today's discussion. Without further ado, we'll like to move forward with the panel. Thank you. I'd like to start to open the conversation by asking each of you to share your initial reactions to our energy report. What's resonated most with you and what you think it means for North Carolina's future?
Shall I start?
Sure, let's start with you, Kit.
Great. I'm the generalist in this group, and amongst our steering committee as well. And what really struck me is the demand that is for now and for the future, and the imperative of starting to try and get as many different types of energy production going in order to meet that need, because it's not going to decrease over time. And we've got quite a reputation in North Carolina for being a great place to do business, but a lot of that has been because we've had this available resource. We've got some aging infrastructure, and we also had the impact of weather conditions, which we know well in Western North Carolina, unfortunately. And we've got to take some measures and begin now to get energy infrastructure in place that will take us into the future. So that was the thing that really struck me about the report.
Yeah, to talk. George.
Yeah, some of my thoughts will echo Kit's, but I just want to point out the important connection between the state's economic growth and how much it has invested in energy infrastructure. The message here is if we continue to invest, North Carolina will remain competitive in the future. Our state's economic success is the result of smart planning, strong collaboration, and strong engagement from a broad sector. The report really emphasizes how energy is an important lever that can boost economic prosperity. It can create jobs and it can help everyone grow together, even with the fast population increases that we've experienced and the economic development successes our state has enjoyed.
Kevin.
Well, Dana, thank you. And I'd say maybe three things that I think about as reflection on this report. One, I'm very thankful to serve at Duke Energy, or be myself, in a state where business leaders can come together and work on solutions. And I think that's what you are seeing with the Foundation's report here. Number two, and more specific to the report, here at Duke Energy, or while at Duke Energy, I've learned there are lots of opinions about energy. And what this report does for me is we have a cross-section of North Carolina businesses coming together to speak with one voice about their needs and their expectations. I'm hearing some of those expectations on this Zoom call right now, and that's my third takeaway. This is a set of expectations to Duke Energy, to us at Duke Energy, on what we need to do to serve our customers. But clearly, we're not going to be able to meet that objective without the support of all of us here on this Zoom call and many folks across the state.
Yeah, I think these are all really solid points, and something we're really glad the urgency of demand, the urgency of the investment needed, and really that we're able to articulate the business voice here. So thank you for that. One of the key findings of the report is that in all of the above, energy strategy balances cost, sustainability, and reliability. Nuclear, gas, renewables, storage, and more. That gives us flexibility and certainty. Let's start, George, with you. How do dependable energy today and zero carbon planning for the future fit together?
So I think we've all noticed how our electricity needs are skyrocketing. You read about it every day. And don't get me wrong, these growth signals are great for the long-term benefit of the state. But what that means is we've got to build some power plants, and that takes years to construct. So, my takeaway from the report is the short-term solution is to maximize and use our current resources and in the longer term, continue to improve the different ways we generate electricity. That means investing in our power grid, supporting clean energy options, including nuclear and advanced nuclear. The energy world is getting much more complicated and certainly more demanding. So we need a balanced and forward-looking approach to make sure that we've got reliable and affordable power supply to offer.
Complicated indeed. It's been a learning experience going through this process. Let's go to you, Kevin. How do renewables, storage, natural gas, and nuclear each contribute to balancing affordability and sustainability?
All of them are incredibly important. We talk about the growth that we are seeing. We heard it in Kit's opening comments. For us, this is exciting to try and meet this growth, but to do it in a way that is affordable for our customers, continues to be and provide reliable electricity, to meet a net zero goal by 2050, it's going to be incredibly challenging. And so here is how we are thinking about meeting that challenge. Our approach is to focus first on existing generation and energy efficiency. That's where we start. Make sure we are investing in our existing generation, that it's continuing to work and serve our customers. And energy efficiency is a great investment because the best megawatt for us is one we don't have to build. And that's in partnership with our customers to have a more efficient system. Second, we'll look to new resources. In this case, we're looking to new always-on resources, natural gas and carbon-free nuclear energy. Once we've laid those two out, we then look to the energy resources that we can build right now to meet the needs of our customers who need electricity right now. And what we can build in 2 to 3 years is solar and storage. So that's how we think about an approach, an all-of-the-above approach that has fuel diversity, that meets the needs of our customers, and is a least cost approach to building generation needed to meet the state's needs.
Important, good nuance there, and it's great that to have begin to understand those nuances of this very complicated problem. Kit, let's look to you. Businesses, especially in your area, are setting ambitious sustainability targets, but they also rely on reliability as a foundation for their competitiveness and why they do business in North Carolina. How do you see those two priorities working together?
Well, in this environment in Western North Carolina, you can be a strong environmentalist. You can care about the quality of your water and your air and your view sheds of the beautiful mountains and rivers that we have here, and be concerned about business. I mean, those two things are not mutually exclusive. So that is almost one of the cultural elements of this area is to care deeply about the environment. And just having gone through Helene, the reliability factor is on everybody's minds. Reliability of power and water, any infrastructure, transportation, all of it is on our minds right now, and how we can be how we can build back in a way that is sustainable for the long term, both sustainable from an environmental perspective, but also sustainable from an economic development perspective. So it's on our mind in a big way. But that reliability and the cost are both foundational to economic development for the long run for this state.
Yeah. I'm going to use an easy segue here because I think really reliability is the next thing we want to talk about. And it's not just about keeping the lights on. It powers that economic growth, that competitiveness, the thing that puts North Carolina #1 in business, the job creation we're seeing, an investment in our state. Reliability means predictable power that businesses can count on, but achieving that requires collaboration across utilities, regulators, communities, and business leaders. And I want to stay with you, Kit, because this is something when we talked about doing this panel that you brought up regularly. You saw how that collaboration mattered. I'd love to hear a little bit more from you, especially in that experience around the Pratt Whitney development, and then, of course, in recovery from Hurricane Helene.
Pratt and Whitney is landing that project. That was the largest manufacturing project west of Charlotte in this state's history. And we are, and I talk about collaboration. Kevin has mentioned collaboration before. We had to have it on this project in so many ways, particularly around energy. Duke Energy was asked to build a substation and to do it within the construction timeline for that organization. And that project meant $650 million in capital investment and 800 jobs. And when you're talking about jobs in Western North Carolina, fully 40% of the people who work in Buncombe County every day are coming from throughout the region. So it means it's not just Asheville or Buncombe County, it's the entire region that benefits from a project of that nature. And I think the experience was so positive that we've seen continued expansion from Pratt & Whitney. We're going to be over 1,000 jobs on that site. They've already exceeded the 850 number and over $1 billion in capital investment, which for the long-term community is so very important, especially now. And I think having the variety of types of energy production that Kevin was alluding to is incredibly important, especially as we've seen. I mean, you can't have all your eggs in one basket at this point in time. And that's especially important when you're facing the situation we face with a natural disaster. Infrastructure and the strength of that infrastructure and diversity of that type of energy, I think, is incredibly important and is one of the things that this particular vision underlines.
You know, Kevin, Kit has given you a positive Yelp review on working on that Pratt Whitney project. Let's take it a little more serious and things that were a little, really very pressing of everyone's mind. The situation in Western North Carolina with Helene. Speak a little bit to that about coordination from Duke around economic development projects and disaster recovery that's all ongoing. None of these things happen in a silo. Give us a little perspective there, Kevin, if you would.
Appreciate that. And Kit, thank you for those kind comments. I will make sure I share those with the team, and I'll make sure I share with the team. It's now an expansion to 1,000 total jobs. That is fantastic. Congratulations to you and the entire team there in the Western North Carolina with that work. You mentioned building a substation as they were doing the construction. Candidly, with what the growth we are seeing coming to our state, we know that's likely not going to be a one-time event, that we're going to have to expedite our construction, our planning processes to meet the needs of the companies who are coming here, but also the ones that we want to expand here. So we do understand that. And you mentioned Helene, and it brings to mind a very quick story I just want to really share with you all. So during the recovery of Helene, just about 5 days after the storm had come through, we had two line workers, Matt Martinka and Nathan Curley. We were dealing with the VA hospital that had an under-resourced generator and needed power restoration. We couldn't get to them. All the roads were blocked. There was no way there. And these two line workers, hiked 1.5 miles up the mountain and made the connection to restore power to the VA hospital. There wasn't a PowerPoint that told them how to do it. There wasn't some corporate approved plan on the steps necessary to get there. They just did it. They found a way to serve those veterans. Well, hearing this story, our new CEO, Harry Sedaris, heard this story from me, and he turned to all of us and he said, "That's an example that I want all of you to follow." Those two folks found a way to get the job done for our customers. And so we are applying that, yes, to our economic development efforts, but it's also being applied to, as we think about resiliency, it's being applied to how we think about strategic grid improvements, upgrading our lines, our poles, working in our flood-prone areas, where we're so excited that we have doubled the past 2 years. We have doubled the number of customers who have autonomous restoration services in place. Really, really important. But we're also focused always on planning and preparation, tabletop exercises, making sure our resources are ready for the next storm that we know is around the corner. But all hope it will not be nearly as devastating as Helene.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. You know, my experience when at DOT working with Duke was that when storms hit, they were always on the phone in that war room, ready to do work. And that's a great story that illustrates really the can-do attitude. So, George, I want to turn over to you. Let's take it back to business and look a little bit on downtime. You know, what does downtime and outage mean for industry? And what are the challenges of that reliability faces in North Carolina?
Yeah, I will just kind of probably provide a little overlay of those two stories, those two examples that Kevin and Kit just shared. But coordination between utilities and regulators and customers, it's critical. And the manufacturing sector, they rely heavily on the utilities. They view them as key partners. Without their power, they don't have the ability to produce products. And utilities understand that. They actively engage with these stakeholders as their energy needs evolve. They not only just increase, but sometimes the quality of the service that they require changes, and that is on the utility. And the earlier the utility it becomes aware of these needs, the better they can react. So this communication and collaboration, it promotes resilience and reliability, and it forms an effective and successful partnership.
You know, it's a great point. It reminds me of this process when we built this energy vision was initially engaging a broad range of stakeholders. And one of them in one of the sessions, the listening sessions we had, said we would love to hear about manufacturers automating sooner. When they decide they want to automate, if they're facing workforce challenges, filling positions, all of the challenges that we see in that ecosystem, bringing that into the decision they make to automate puts that demand on. So hearing earlier from manufacturers that are making those technological advancements in their factories, that really just illustrates something I heard direct quote during those experiences.
Dana,
Yes, ma'am.
In talking with a former chair who was in advanced manufacturing, he was telling me about the sensitivity of the equipment they use, and that if there isn't consistency in energy, that it can end up damaging equipment. Or in a less high-tech type of situation, when you have material going through some of those machines and you have an outage occurs, you have to remove all that material from the entire line, which ends up taking a tremendous amount of time at downtime for your staff, as well as your production schedule. So I think that reliability piece it should be underlined.
Let's take reliability. You'll hear it discussed extensively in the report and in the stakeholder feedback. Let's shift to resiliency, two terms that you often hear interchangeable. Let's talk a little bit about resilience and how it means building a system that can withstand storms, floods, cyber threats, sabotage, and recover quickly. The system-wide approach, an ecosystem view. I want to start with Kevin and really ask you, what are some of the steps that utilities are taking to harden substations, underground lines when it makes sense, strengthen cyber protection? What are y'all doing in this space that we should know about?
Well, I appreciate the question, and it is part of that grid hardening that I was mentioning a little bit earlier. And our approach to it is, I think, comes in two ways. One, it is our own analysis of the system, the grid. Where are we seeing vulnerabilities? Where are we seeing weaknesses related to storms and recovery times, outages, power quality challenges that Kit just mentioned? And she's exactly right. We hear from our manufacturing customers the great importance they have on power quality. So that's part of it, our analysis of the system. And then the second is listening to our customers. What are they saying that they need to see from us so that we can then come take that information back and plan to build out the system to meet their expectations. And then working it's not just our decision. We have to work very closely with the commission, with the North Carolina Public Staff, that is the consumer watchdog, and also customer advocates and customer representatives who engage in the process to make sure we are doing it when it's needed, only when it's needed, and doing it in the least cost manner.
George, I want to move to you. I think the stories about equipment failures, we heard about healthcare systems where lives are at stake when power quality is an issue. Um, let's think about the economic developments. North Carolina back at the top of the list, best place in the country to do business. Even in a year when a quarter of our state, a third of our state, however you like to draw your lines, was recovering from the worst storm that ever hit it. And we moved up in the rankings because of how we handled that, I think, part and parcel. Give me a perspective on how that plays into the economic development conversation.
Sure. In a couple of sentences, I think the report emphasizes that a proactive and a collaborative energy strategy is a unique opportunity to meet the increasing and the demanding needs of the advanced technology customers. It's not just data centers. There are a lot of advanced technology that's going to be implemented by the customers that we're recruiting. And if we're successful in doing that, we will position the state to be successful in the future. It's no accident that we have a reliable power grid. There's been a lot of discussion and mindful direction by the utilities, and you've got Duke Utilities, you've got the co-ops, you've got the municipal utilities. They all work together. They work independently in their service areas, but we take power for granted in North Carolina because we have such a good situation. There's a lot of good work that has been invested in that in the past, and that effort will need to continue in the future for us to be competitive.
Yeah, what got us here won't get us there, but really the initiative and drive is there. Kit, Asheville had to rebuild and recover. What lessons from that experience can help shape employer confidence when they're talking about looking at Western North Carolina to relocate?
Well, and confidence is exactly what is needed. I mean, because you're talking about people making decisions about how they're going to rebuild and where they're going to rebuild. So there's risk tolerance that has to be considered as well. We have found collaboration was absolutely key. I've done a number of speaking engagements about what it's been like to go through this process, and the thing that strikes me most is that the relationships and the trust that we have built between the public sector and the private sector has paid untold benefits when you get into a situation of responding to a crisis and then trying to recover. Having those relationships is super important. And I so appreciate the way people in this community have responded to the storm. If we're going to get businesses who have risked so many things, I was talking earlier about, the electric bike tour guide that lost his stock down in the River Arts District is now reopening, but he talked about he's mortgaged his house to start that business. There has to be a degree of confidence and certainty about things, certainty around cost, certainty around availability, and that goes for all kinds of infrastructure, but most especially power and water too. I'm sorry,
and transportation and broadband.
It's all of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Literally is all of it.
I'm glad this isn't a complicated problem we've really got to tackle. Collaboration continues to come up. It's really the key in so many of these. It's also something that came up in the key to making progress in regulatory and permitting delays. These delays that stall investment, create uncertainty, exactly the opposite of what a business wants before they invest. They don't just frustrate projects, they stall the development we see, the recovery and economic development. So we heard they want coordination, predictability, and speed in approvals. I want to start with you, George, and ask why predictability and speed are so critical to business.
I guess my thought around that is today's business world is fast paced. It is unpredictable. And when you have that combination, it does introduce a significant risk into the business planning. So as a state, we need to be agile, opportunistic, and we need to position ourselves for success. As we embark upon these energy strategies, we have to have coordination with the regulatory approval authorities. We've got to get permitting approval, and that can make it more challenging for some states. So it's a unique opportunity for us to do a better job than other states. These delays increase costs, they create unnecessary risk for business and utilities, and they're probably not very attractive from an economic development recruitment perspective. So in North Carolina, we need to continue to communicate and work together, develop effective policies, and position us to stay ahead of that curve.
Yeah. And, we're showing we've done it. The Pratt Whitney example is a great example. And I'm sure there's countless other ones. I wanted to Kevin, I learned so much during this process about the regulated utility model, where the role of the commission comes in, where DEQ is at play, all of the different engagement platforms that a utility has to leverage to develop projects. I'm really interested in where you've seen progress and where maybe additional challenges remain.
So that's a great point on the commission and the regulatory process in North Carolina. So we have a utilities commission that regulates us, provides oversight of us. And for decades, they have been a partner and have taken great pride, and I think will continue to having a system that provides electricity rates below the national average, that has high degree of reliability for the customers, and takes a methodical approach to transition and change. And I guess that level of certainty has really benefited all of our customers and certainly the state. We have a lot to build. We've talked about substations, we've talked about new generation, storage. We have a lot to build across the state. And I do want to share, before we ever put a shovel in the ground, before we file the first permit application, we're working with our communities. We're working with those neighbors. Talk to them, learn from them, listen to them, adjust if necessary, because we need to be successful in constructing new projects in this state to meet the expectations of our customers. So that's our first part, is engagement and listening. And we'll stay engaged all throughout the process. Now, I do appreciate the chamber and the advocacy work of the NC Chamber on some regulatory reforms that have taken place in North Carolina, including those reforms that put time limits on regulatory review. Didn't change the regulatory review, what needed to be reviewed, but it did help put some time limits on that. And that has helped with certainty for us to be able to know that we'll be able to move forward with these projects and put the long lead time procurements into place, be ready to move forward and meet the expectations of our customers. Looking ahead, we talked about collaboration. We're looking ahead this fall, technically October 1st
Save the date.
Yes. We will file the next Carbon Plan Integrated Resource Plan, CPIRP, with the Commission. It'll be a very public process with customer engagement and advocate engagement at the Commission, but it will show the results of our models and recommendations on what is needed to meet the demands of this state for the next 15 years. And also talk about what type of new generation and how much of it do we need to meet those needs. A lot of oversight, a lot of input, not just the utilities, lots of public meetings, a really, I think, important approach, and candidly, for us, is probably the next step in everyone's shared goal of North Carolina remaining a leader in energy. Will be this next carbon plan and this next approved decision or order from the Commission.
Yeah, it's great. North Carolina leads, and that's a big part of where we are, and we want to continue to do so. We spoke a little bit earlier about balancing sustainability and progress and business thriving. Let's talk a little bit about balancing that advocacy for speed while also making sure that communities are heard. Give us some perspective on that.
Well, when you were talking about engagement with the community, Kevin, boy, we major in that in Asheville. There's a protest about almost everything at any given time. But and I've literally watched the process of trying to locate substations. I think y'all Duke probably had to purchase multiple sites, and not probably, I know you did. You had to purchase multiple sites in order to get one moving, and we've had to be engaged in that process to try and underline what happens if we don't do this kind of work in a timely manner and ensure that reliability that everybody wants. So it's really important. We at the local level will continue to play a role in advocating for infrastructure. And I know that the North Carolina Chamber will also. I mean, I think this document is great in that it gives some very direct feedback about what the business community would like to see. And hopefully that helps. We just need to be careful also to provide cover for our elected officials and others to be able to be tough and stand for that diversification of the types of energy that we're going to need in order to make this accomplishable. So I think all that's going to require all of us continuing to work together, continuing to collaborate to deliver that message and help our elected officials stand behind it.
You know, and I think we add to that the direct voice of business. We add to that the data and the analytics that support the connectivity of electricity and power and business development. I mean, these are all a part of that push and pull in our system. So great perspectives. So we are getting close to time. I want to make sure I give everybody an opportunity. If there's something I haven't asked you about, Kit's got some more great reviews. If I know she doesn't in store, but if there's something else that you wanted to share or a question I didn't really ask you, let's jump to that. Let's start. Kevin, anything?
I have heard the directive. We have our orders. We're ready to get working. Thank you.
All right. George.
Get out of that.
All right. We got a retweet from George. I don't know if we call it tweeting anymore. Kit?
We need to go. We need to get on it because there's a lot to be done and we need to make tracks.
Good point and good one to end on. As we close, I want to emphasize that this energy vision reflects the voice of North Carolina's business community across everything we've discussed: reliability, affordability, sustainability, resilience, and regulatory streamlining. The common thread we've heard is collaboration. I think that's something to take forward. As Kevin said, we've got our orders. We're glad to put this report up there with the data and the support behind really this energy vision that articulates what the business feels and what the business sees on the daily basis. I'd like to thank our panelists for sharing insights, and I'd like to thank the audience for being a part of this initial conversation.
Well, thank you for that conversation, everyone. I think one thing I loved the most was seeing the trolleys circle behind Kit in Asheville and seeing the hustle and bustle, and hopefully it's a sign that tourism is continuing to pick up in Western North Carolina. That brought some joy to me. But really what I took away from that conversation, which was fantastic, is certainly they underscored many of the strategic pillars that we outlined in our report when it comes to reliability, affordability, certainly increasingly clean energy, and how we're making the business case for that. But what I really heard come through loud and clear is that going forward, our work together needs to be collaborative and it needs to be proactive. We heard some great examples from Kit and Kevin and George about what can happen when the business community, the communities themselves, the utilities are communicating, collaborating, working together, and how that drives economic development, investment, job growth, and also in times of disasters and recovery, how our communities are coming together and leaning on those relationships that they have built in blue sky state. So certainly I want to give another thank you to George, Kevin, and Kit, and certainly Dana for facilitating that great discussion. You bring such expertise to this topic. And thank you all for joining us today. Your engagement and your leadership are what keep North Carolina's economy strong and moving forward. So before we wrap up, I have a couple of quick reminders for everyone. You will see on the screen now, there's a QR code. That's a link to the full business-driven energy vision report. You will also find a link to that in the chat, and we will send you a link as well in a follow-up email. So plenty of ways to access the full report. And on the next slide, there's a QR code for a short feedback survey. We hope that you will take just a couple minutes to share your thoughts. It really does help us make these sessions more valuable in the future, and we do take the time to go through each and every survey. Also, when you exit the webinar, the survey will pop up so you can access it that way as well. And then most importantly, I just want to keep this conversation going. You will see our energy vision will be integrated into several upcoming discussions and events that we're hosting. I will call out our business playbook event. It will be a panel topic there in October. And also, we're glad to join your conversations. Anything that you may be having within your own companies, communities, or industries, we are happy to take part and be a part of the dialogue going forward. So on behalf of the North Carolina Chamber Foundation, thank you for your partnership and for all you do to help shape North Carolina's future. We look forward to continuing this dialogue with you. Have a great day.